I'd just seen this article on IGN on Twitter, so credit to them. Tech experts discussed the brief Breath of the Wild sequel footage from its delay announcement and suggested aspects like its image quality, volumetric clouds, and more potentially preclude it from being able to run natively on the current Switch. Nintendo, what are you doing? Now, don't get me wrong, I've got all the love in the world for Nintendo. Breath of the Wild is probably the best, my favourite game. It's maybe second to Kingdom Hearts 2. But it's up there, definitely. Breath of the Wild, Zelda in general games are just some of my favourites, as you can see by the tattoo on my arm that you've probably seen on my streams. But this, if they want Breath of the Wild 2 to be a console exclusive for the Nintendo Switch 2 or whatever comes after the Nintendo Switch, then I think that's a really, really bad idea. I feel like, obviously, with all these delays and stuff that we've been had with it, which obviously the pandemic didn't help with some of that, it's not a good idea to make this Zelda game a exclusive for a new console, which means people would have to purchase another console and the game. They did also say this kind of stuff about when they released The Witcher 3 on the Switch, and they obviously downgraded that. Now, that's obviously not something I want them to do for a Zelda game. Obviously, with Zelda games, it's not just like a port of a PS4 or Xbox game like The Witcher 3 was, so it had to be downgraded because of how more powerful the PS4/Xboxes are, which is fair enough. The Witcher 3 is an absolutely huge game anyway, so I kind of get that. It's a lot bigger than Breath of the Wild. It's just base without DLC. Now, Breath of the Wild was obviously a big game, yes, and you can spend many, 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 many hours exploring Hyrule and doing every single mission, all the shrines, all the collecting all the Deku seeds, stuff like that. I get that. That's fair enough. I did it myself. It took, I can't even remember how many hours. Definitely over 200 hours. It took a lot of effort to do. But they managed to put that on the console, the Wii U. You know what I mean? So, and the Wii U was a much more basic, is that the right word? Not like, it was a much more basic console than the Nintendo Switch. Like, the capacity that the Wii U has compared to the Nintendo Switch is, it's crazy, the difference of how better the Nintendo Switch is. So I don't understand why Nintendo would want to do this. It's the most, and probably the most anticipated game right now of any console, maybe. Like, if I probably would have said Cyberpunk 12, 18 months ago, but we all know what happened with that. But obviously now they've improved that. But Nintendo, just don't do this. Like, as like a public service announcement to you, I think this is a bad idea. Like, I don't think you should put the sequel to Breath of the Wild, which everybody has been waiting for and anticipating since the release of Breath of the Wild 1 in 2018, like, you're talking, 4 years now? And I know they've tried to fill the gap with the Skyward Sword HD, which is great for somebody like myself who didn't ever get to play the Wii version. I was a late bloomer to Zelda games. Breath of the Wild was the first game that I played, and then I went backwards. I'm still trying to get my hands on some of them now so I can actually play them. So obviously, like I said, I've played Breath of the Wild, Link Between Worlds, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess. I've played them ones, and then some of the classic ones, like A Link to the Past, and a smattering of the others. But it's just, anyway, going back to my point, you can't keep throwing old Zelda games at us to tide us over until you decide what you want to do with the latest Zelda game, especially when we've been anticipating it for this long now, and all these trailers we've had for it. It's just in my mind, I think it's a bad idea to do that. I don't think it's a good move, and especially if you want to make, it's going to sell copies. Obviously, it's going to sell lots of copies, millions and millions and millions. But millions and millions of people have already got a Nintendo Switch, and isn't it one of the most popular, if the most popular console on the planet right now? Because obviously nobody can get their hands on a PS5 or an Xbox Series X. It's just, to me, if I was working for Nintendo, it's a no-brainer. You put it on the Switch, you know what I mean? You put it on the console that everybody now has of yours and everybody adores. The Nintendo Switch is an amazing piece of technology, and it just makes the most sense. Don't create a brand new console just for I'm saying that they did make the Nintendo Wii for motion, but anyway, don't create a brand new console just to put Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 on it. Put Breath of the Wild 2 on the Nintendo Switch. It's the marketing wise, it's the best move. And I know I'm probably just like preaching to the choir here. Nobody, like, I'm just the opinion of one fan, like, but surely a lot of other people are thinking this too. I mean, IGN, again, credit to them, they put this on here. And I did scroll through the comments. I unfortunately didn't manage to get a screen grab of them, but a lot of people weren't happy about it. It's spending more money to get the thing that we want, when obviously money is, for a lot of people, not a commodity as much as they did have. That didn't sound right in my head, but you get what I mean. Like, not as like, money is, people are struggling with their money these days, and having to buy a 250 to 400 quid console and then a 50-60 pound game on top of that is just not a good marketing move for Nintendo, for a game that has probably been the most highly anticipated game in years. I can't think of another Nintendo game that's had this much hype behind it for so long, and people are still making YouTube videos about it, like this one. Still making theories about the original trailer they dropped in, was it 2020? I think it was 2020. So obviously, yes, we get a pandemic happen and that slowed down production. But if it slowed down production of the game, that surely would slow down production of a new console. You'd just downgrade any games that were going to be on a potential new console to go on the Switch to get them out there so people can play them. This is just me, my opinion on what they should do with Breath of the Wild 2 as a fan. I adore, but I can't tell you, if I could just go up to every single creator of Breath of the Wild and shake their hand, give them a big hug, tell them how much that game made me happy in a time where I had a lot going on at that time, 2018, and it was introduced to me by a family member. They were like, just come round and have a look at this game, and he gave me they let me have a go. It was on the Wii U at the time, before we had Nintendo Switches, and I just fell in love with it. I spent months and months on the Wii U version, and I did nearly everything on it. And then I got it on the Nintendo Switch when I eventually got a Switch. I just fell in love with it all over again. And then Master Mode, I did that as well. And it's just such an incredible game. And I sound like I'm reviewing Breath of the Wild now, but the point is, you're going to upset a lot of fans by doing this, and that's not the move to make. Personally, I think you should release it on the freaking Switch. It's the perfect console. Everybody has one. Everybody loves one. Nobody's got a bad thing to say about the Nintendo Switch. My screen just went off. I hope everything's still recording. That was odd. But yeah, just please don't do this, Nintendo. Please don't do this. Put it on the Switch. That's all I'm asking for. And hopefully, if a lot of other people say this too, they'll understand that it's the best thing for business. But yeah, that's just me going off on one about Nintendo apparently making this game too powerful for the Nintendo Switch. But fingers crossed, they do something about it and they sort it, and hopefully we don't have to have this conversation or a conversation about a new Nintendo console coming out when nobody can afford one. But yeah, that was just me going off on one. But leave a like on the video if you agree. Feel free to drop a comment if you differ with my opinion. Fair enough. I'd love to hear it. But let me know what you think. I'd really appreciate it. Anybody who sees this video and anybody who wants to spread the word of this video, just please do that. Drop a like, drop a subscribe if you want. I'd really appreciate it. And if you want to see more videos of me just expressing my opinions on things, I'd appreciate it. I've got a lot of opinions about a lot of video games and about a lot of things that I'm into. So yeah, I'd happily do that. So anyway, thank you. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I was trying to make a TED Talk joke. It didn't work. Anyway, bye.